Good evening, everybody. Happy Friday night. Welcome to Drink and Draw, brought to you by the Wisconsin Veterans Museum. If you all remember, for those of you that have been here with us before, my name is Yvette Pino. I'm the curator of veteran art at the Wisconsin Veterans Museum. If you haven't been here before, welcome. Thank you for joining us in tonight's program. I have a question in chat that said, are the rest of you hearing audio? Audio word is coming in that audio is being heard. Jill, just check your sound settings. If you go down to the little microphone and click on it, you can check your audio settings and see which speakers are coming in. Again, welcome to Drink and Draw. Tonight is a very special evening. We have a guest artist, a dear friend of mine, Amber Zora, is joining us here, and she is going to be teaching an incredible class on Sumi Ink drawing. So we've been waiting for this class. I'm excited that you're here, Amber. We finally got our schedules coordinated so we could have you here with us for the evening's event. A little bit of housekeeping before we start the project. You're going to see a little bit of a different format tonight. Everybody's video is turned off and audio is turned off, and that helps us have a wonderful, safe program and streamlined so that there's little to no interruptions for our guest artist. But our chat function is still very much available. So if you have any questions, please feel free to go ahead and use the chat function. As you can see, I've already been looking at it and seeing that folks are helping each other out with their audio and tech needs. If you are struggling to hear or have questions, please use the chat function, and my role, and Molly, who is here with our education team, our role is going to be to monitor this chat and make sure that all of your questions are answered. From your Eventbrite, you should have received a notification that said that you want to make a sketch before tonight's before tonight's class. If you didn't do that, that's okay. I know Amber's going to give a moment of pause to go over the image, and I'll let her take the lead on that. But we have plenty of time tonight, so we want to make this as fun as possible for everybody. I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and give you a little bit of background information about Amber, and then I'm going to hand it over to her so she can get the program going and you guys can meet her. But as you know from our events, announcements, Amber is an Army veteran. She is an incredible artist and a friend of mine, and an interdisciplinary artist based out of Rapid City, South Dakota. I'm not sure if it's as cold or maybe colder there tonight as it is here, but I know the Midwest is getting a really big chill. She received her Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Alabama at Birmingham and a Master of Fine Arts degree in photography and integrated media from Ohio University. Amber has exhibited her work in local and national galleries, including the San Francisco Arts Commission, the Las Vegas Contemporary Art Center, and the National Veteran Art Museum, among other notable spaces. She was also, as I said, in the Army for 8 years and deployed to Qayyarah, West Iraq as an ammunition specialist from 2006 to 2007 with the 592nd Ordnance Company. I'm really excited Amber is able to join us tonight. We were curatorial fellows together a couple years ago, and so we've spent many conversations talking about art, and it's always a pleasure to have another female artist join the ranks here with us tonight. So Amber, welcome, a big welcome to you. I'm going to go ahead and spotlight your video so that we can see you. I'm going to replace me and say welcome, and I'll mute myself. And again, you can chime in if you need me to answer questions about the veteran or just have a conversation.
Thanks, Yvette. Yeah, I'm beaming in from Rapid City, South Dakota. This is my upstairs studio. There might be a cat wandering around in the background occasionally. And yeah, if you have any questions, you're welcome to use the chat function. And Yvette or Molly, if you want to just, unmute yourselves and ask the question, I'm totally cool with that.
Yeah, Amber, I don't mean to interrupt. I just realized Sherry joined us a little bit late, and I just want to remind everybody, don't be alarmed if your video is not on and you are muted. We are doing a little bit of a different platform tonight. And so we're going to be focusing on our guest artist. And if you have any questions, we'll give, or if you want to share your images, we'll give you an opportunity to email them to us at the end of the program. But thanks. I just want to remind everybody, don't be alarmed if your video is turned off.
Okay, thanks, Yvette. So like Yvette said, I am a photographer, and that's where I was trained, but I went to a residency at the VCCA, the Virginia Center of Creative Arts, in, gosh, 2017, I think. And they have a veteran residency program. If you're a veteran and looking for residencies, they have one. And I didn't want to take photographs at the residency. I wanted to create new work, and I didn't want to edit work while I was there. So that's kind of where I began doing some Sumi ink and watercolors. And so I think that started about 5 years ago. So I'm going to go over some of the materials before we get started. And just a reminder of what Yvette was saying. If you didn't get a chance to make a sketch of the image we're working with, you can do that now. So I used a light box for this, which is on my floor over there. And you can also, now it's dark outside, so you can't really use a window. But I've also used my computer screen. I probably should not tell anyone to do that, to pull up an image on their computer screen and lightly trace from their computer screen using like the light box of their computer. Yeah, don't tell anybody I said you can do that, but yeah. And I also have some artist tape around the edge of my image to just make a cleaner design at the end, so there's not anything that I have to clean up later. So you're welcome to do that as well. I also brought into my studio, that wasn't on the list, a hair dryer if you would like to dry the ink quicker than it will naturally dry. That will just make things move a little quicker. Okay, so if you don't have a sketch, you can start on it while I'm talking about some stuff. You can spotlight me now, but unless this is preferred, I don't know. So the first thing is papers. So there's a lot of different kinds of paper one can use for watercolor, and it depends on the sizing, and fiber, and basically the format of the paper. Even the size of the paper can affect how the paper accepts the water and the pigment, the color of the ink. So the two main papers are artist grade and student grade. Artist quality paper is going to be 100% cotton rag, and that's going to be your arches, and it's going to be more archival. There's not going to be, it's generally natural, acid-free paper. And then you have student grade paper, and that's made with cellulose. So that's from not cotton, but with wood, hemp, or straw. And so it's not going to be as durable. It's not going to like hold up over time the way that archival paper is. And for intro exercises, so you're going to want your drawing to be on that nicer paper. And then for the intro exercises that we're doing, you can use it's like Japanese paper, I think, that Yvette sent. And so I also have I don't know if I should do it this way. I don't know if you can see it.
You can. Here, also I can spotlight you on
so I have some images of, or different, I don't know if you can really tell the difference between the papers here. So this is hot press paper, and it's really smooth. It's 140-pound paper. And we also have cold press. It's a little bit more rough. And then this rough paper as well. And you can't tell quite, but it actually has like bumps on the surface. You wouldn't use this kind of paper for like detailed drawings. You could use a hot press for that. And then this is synthetic paper. It's called Yupo. And it can be like a lot of fun to make drawings on. I pulled this out because this is Yupo. And you can kind of see that the Sumi ink just kind of sits on the surface of the Yupo.
Is that like frosted mylar?
Um,
Yupo?
I've only known it as Yupo paper,
Okay.
but there are different like weights of Yupo. This is 105. So that's a little about the paper. Some more notes. So I have this Sumi ink that I've been using for probably 5 years. Like a little bit goes a long way, right? And one of the things about like, well, Sumi ink is a traditional practice. And if you study traditional Sumi ink, you can use an ink stick that you grind into a stone and you add water to it. And that's the traditional way to create the pigment, the ink for Sumi ink. I've only ever used this, like it already mixed. And Sumi ink, the practice is incredibly old. It's like from the 9th century. And it was developed by Zen Buddhist monks and is brought over to Japan from China in the 14th century. So like, I just want to like honor that practice, that it's been like around for a very long time. And there's a lot of different ways to, like a lot of different masters like presented in different ways. But okay, so we're gonna get started. Oh, brushes. So these are synthetic brushes that I have. I imagine you guys were given synthetic brushes as well, because they're not quite as much as hair brushes. And you don't, the biggest rule with the brushes, these are round brushes, obviously, you don't want to store them in water face down. That will ruin the tip of the brush. And if you're drying them, you want to dry them flat versus like on their ends. Someone told me that. I've always, like, I mean, I have brushes over here that, you know, but that are up that way. But if you're drying them out, you want them to be laying flat, and that'll retain the integrity of your brush a little bit longer. And so we're gonna start out with a couple exercises. And if you have your 3 different kind of palettes of being able to mix different strengths of the Sumi ink, we can start with that. And I can give you an idea of what. So we have one, can you see that well? We can switch to my, you're gonna want one ink palette that is like 100% Sumi ink, and it's gonna be dark. And then another one that's a medium, and you kind of just add you add water a little bit at a time as you're creating, and kind of make a middle to a weak. And the weakest will have like maybe like a drop of Sumi ink in it. So we can go ahead and start with that. And it dries lighter. And these have been sitting here for a second, so I'm gonna put my brush into my water to the side that you can't see, just to kind of get that point back on it. And this is the lightest wash that I have. It's the weakest. You probably can't even really see that very well, but I'll bring it up here. It's very light. And sometimes it'll be tricky, right? So like this looks pretty dark in my palette here, but it's not as dark on the page, right? Like that's not super dark. I'm not sure if this is a medium to dark. One thing to note while you're making these different tonal ranges is that if you like clean your brush off with water and bring it back to your palette, and you add water to your palette, it's going to change the color over time. I mean, that's something that happens with watercolor as well. And this is totally just Sumi ink, just the darkest. One of the things I like about using Sumi ink is that, and playing with it, is that you know, you don't need to mix a ton of colors. It's just tonal ranges, right?
Amber, how many tone? I mean, this is going to be one of those weird questions where, as an artist, you probably don't have the exact answer. But when you're working with Sumi ink in your drawings, how many different tonal ranges do you find yourself using?
Probably just like these 4.
Wow.
I mean, and then if something's like too, if I'm like, whoa, that's like not what I want, that is too dark. If it's still wet, I can like pull some of that color out of it, right? I would normally be on like an angle, but my tripod's in the way, but like I might try to like pull a little bit, and like obviously these tones become different, right? And if you ever find yourself in a place where you're like, oh no, that is not what I wanted. See if I can do this without making a mess. Oh, here's another one. You can blot out the color pretty quickly. And it like, you know, I mean, it's not a perfect science, but I mean, like you can remove tone from the page if it's not working for you.
And that's another reason why the heavier stock paper is better for this process, right? Like the wet media paper, because you'll start destroying your paper if you're not using the watercolor.
Well, and it can like really elevate your artwork if you use better materials. Like, of course, like if the only thing that you have access to is, you know, watercolors like at the dollar store and like brushes from the dollar store, like that's, you know, you should use what you have. But if you can get better paper and get better brushes, you can make much better artwork very quickly in a way that is probably not going to happen with cheaper materials. So I'm going to keep doing a couple more exercises. I'm going to assume that people kind of like are flowing with it. Let me know if anybody in the chat is like really confused or it needs more time mixing.
Yeah, chat looks pretty clear right now, so you're good to go. Keep going.
Okay. So the next bit is just kind of like giving yourself like setting your mind for creation. That's what we're going to do next. So if you're in an uncomfortable position, maybe put both your feet on the floor, sit up tall, you know, relax your shoulders. I'm going to use this middle brush. This is a size 6, my middle brush here. And I'm going to load some medium Sumi ink on it. My arm and shoulder relax. I'm going to try to like just kind of get similar pressure and make circles across my page here. And try not to knock my tripod over. I'm like not sitting square even. You know, and I find that sometimes if I'm just like even making an interesting brush stroke, it's like, wow, that's like a beautiful dry brush across the page. And then just kind of, you know, move your brush side to side. And up and down. And try to release like any tension that's in your shoulder. Okay, I'm gonna set this aside. We're just gonna keep chugging right along with other exercises to get used to the materials. We're gonna be using all 3 brushes, so have those handy. I'm gonna start with the medium because it's already wet here. And I'm gonna try to make 3 of the smallest brush stroke lines I can with this medium brush. And so I'm just gonna use the tip of the brush. Okay. I'm gonna take the same brush and lay it on its side and drag it across the page and try to make the largest brush stroke that I can with this brush. Oh, it's not enough on it. Whoops. And I'm going to do that with all 3 of these brushes. The technique we're doing right now, I'm going to move to the larger one next, is called wet on dry. And that just means it's a wet brush on dry paper. Did you guys cover that when you did watercolors?
Yeah, we did the wet on dry, wet on wet, and then the blending.
Okay. So I won't spend too much time on that.
It's always nice for a review.
Depending on like, what kind of brushes one gets, you can definitely determine the quality on like how much ink actually stays in like the belly of the brush, right?
Right. It's really lovely though to see the gradient as you pull it from left to right.
Mm-hmm.
You can almost play with tonal variation just in that.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. I'm just going to do one little one over here. Oh, well, there's not a lot of 2. Really see what's possible. Okay, so I'm going to do something similar to this, but it's going to be kind of like creating a leaf shape. I'm going to use the medium brush here with a medium. And I'm going to start with the point and drag it a little bit just on the point of the brush, and then start applying pressure and then pull up. And you should be like, get like a little bit of a leaf shape, right? And if you do that and kind of curve it, you get more of a leaf shape. One thing I discovered, I didn't know that this was like an acceptable thing within like watercolor, is that like a lot of watercolor artists use both sides of their paper, like if they're practicing. So that's something to.
I thought you were. I was thinking like for their compositions, that would be a cool and wonderful until you're like in the curatorial role like me, and then you're like, no, why would you do that?
I think that they only do it for stuff that they're practicing on.
Gotcha.
Okay, so I did knock over my tripod.
We find that with our sketchbooks in the collections a lot, where you have these amazing compositions, but they're two-sided. And so the Art Institute does this really beautiful frame. It's a two-sided frame so you can walk around at 360 and see both sides of the drawing. It's really,
Oh,
it's
cool.
really wonderful when they do that.
Yeah, they'll have to do that when I'm a famous artist.
There you go. That'll be your signature.
Okay, so I'm gonna do a little like the wet on wet, wet on dry, just to show like what that looks like for maybe people that didn't get to Yvette's class. So right now I'm putting just straight up water on this middle brush and making a little block, little wet block here on my page. You want it to be pretty wet. And then you can take medium or dark and just drop in color or pigment into that block, and you can see how the ink spreads. It's like, whoop. I'm gonna do the same thing. Well, I'll show you how to do it without with pigment on my brush first. So there's a kind of easy way to make like a pine tree. And you just kind of make this squiggle triangle with a line down the center. Okay. And you can do that squiggle, that triangle squiggle with water. You can kind of see it. And then you can put the line down the center with a heavier pigment, and it gives you some tonal variation that doesn't happen when you just use straight pigment. So you can, like, that's a fun way to show that tonal variation. And I think that that might be it for these exercises, and we can move on to the actual drawing. So hopefully people enjoyed that. I love doing botanical drawings, like leaves and flowers and stuff, because it's watercolor and Sumi ink is just kind of made for it.
Yeah, you get the wonderful tone, like the variation in there. You don't get that in acrylic, you have to get a very specific wash technique in acrylic and oil in order to achieve that. You don't get the same feeling that you do with ink or watercolor.
Yeah. Well, and like petals are so thin, it kind of, you can get that in watercolor. So I went over some of the ways that you can do a transfer. There's another transfer technique that I knew before, but there is a cool thing that you can like add to it, right? Like, so let's say you're going to use graphite paper. Of course, you have your image on top of the paper that you would want the sketch to go onto. Obviously my sketch is there, so I don't need to do this. But if you got some graphite paper this is from Michael's Craft Smart. And this is how it's done, right? Like you have your image, the graphite facing down onto your paper, and then you push down onto the graphite and it goes down onto the page. The trick that I learned is that if you use a red pen while you're pushing down into the graphite, and this isn't going to go down because you can see all the places that you already went over. And so you don't need to like keep looking at your drawing if you use a red pen or a different color pen than what the image that you're using. So
I'm going to use that trick in my March class. You just gave me a special trick in my March class, which I'll tell about at the end, but excellent.
Okay.
I'll give you
credit. That's a really good one.
And if you don't have access to graphite paper, you can use your a regular pencil on a full sheet of paper and scratch it and scratch it and scratch it until you fill up that whole paper with graphite, and then flip it over. And it's a
Yeah.
quick way if you don't have access to graphite paper.
Okay, graphite paper is like $2.50, like
I
$2.50.
know.
So like if you want
This whole class
like,
started as a way of just whatever you have around your kitchen table,
yeah.
you can use. I agree. It is very economical.
And you can use those over and over again. Like you could probably use the same sheet for 5 years. So the way that I am going to so here's my drawing. I don't know, my sketch. And yeah, I already talked about, normally I'd have this on a board and have it leaned towards me. I don't really have the best setup here for that without it like knocking this tripod down. But I do have like boards around. Maybe I'll put it underneath this. And that's so that the bead from the Sumi ink can kind of like move down with the first wash. And the first wash is going to be the lightest, and we're going to build upon that. And I can show you an example of creating a tonal range with 3 different washes. So in this one, I don't know if you can kind of, okay, in this one, I'm using watercolor in this, and it's obviously green. But like, so these highlights, I didn't go over at all with any wash. I just left them white. And so that's what we're gonna kind of do. We're gonna put the lightest wash of the Sumi ink on this page. So yeah, and if you don't have a hair dryer, it might take a while for it to dry, or you can, freestyle it and kind of just go with the flow and do like use the inks the way that you feel comfortable using them if you want to complete the drawing by the end of the night. So I'm going to start with that. And if Yvette wants to talk about the artist a little bit with this first wash, you're welcome to hop in.
Okay. Yeah. So, as you all are very aware, part of the evening's events is that we pick images or objects from the collection at the Wisconsin Veterans Museum. And I sent Amber a long series of black and white photography, and she picked this image, and it's one of my favorites, actually. We've recently installed it at the new Soldiers Home in Milwaukee, and it's just a beautiful image in motion, and it's from the Robert Duvall collection. And let me pull up his story really quickly, just so I can give a little background of who Robert Duvall is. And Molly's going to put the link to his collection in the chat as well, so if you want to spend some more time. But Robert was originally from Connecticut, ended up settling in Wisconsin, and we have scrapbooks and photography, a lot of postcards from his collection. He was in the 351st Military Police Escort Guard during World War II. And a lot of his images are from his time in the trains at Camp Gordon, where he was stationed. And if you look at this image closely, you can see the people in the foreground are really in movement. And that's because the photograph is taken, we think, while he's on the train going by the shipyard. And it's really lovely, sort of captures the idea of World War II in its time at the shipyard. With, you can see military service members in the far distance, and then people walking in the foreground. But his role was, let me just go. He was first assigned to guard German prisoners while they were transported across the United States to Camp Gordon, Georgia. He was sent to Europe in 1943 and worked in Germany as an administrator in hospitals and rest homes. And then he was later assigned to an army post office in France. And after the war, he returned to the United States and then settled right here in Madison. So if you click on that link to go to his service record on our website, you'll see a picture of Robert Duvall. And there's a lot of black and white photographs in his collection that I love, and we will probably be pulling from in the near future. But I was super excited when Amber picked this one because it's one of the obscure images that I consider unintentional art in our collection. It was a quick snapshot that became a really wonderfully composed moment in time. So thanks for letting me share that, Amber.
Thanks, Sarah. So as you can tell, I'm just kind of washing over these people with one color. Obviously, I'll go over with a darker color later. Or, this is weak pigment, weak ink. I'll go over with a darker pigment later. And up here, that's pretty dark. That'll probably get, And I want to leave all the highlights, but there's like a couple, where's the windows? There's like 2 dark windows right here. And you should have this image pulled up and not necessarily looking exactly at what I'm doing, but like this will help you a lot too if you have it nearby. So I'm
gonna maybe put the image in mine and try to do a split screen real quick. Let's see if I can get that to work, and then Molly, let me know if what you see. But keep going, Amber, while I work on that.
Okay. And I just like am, creating this Sumi Ink bead and pulling that bead down. And what I mean by that is, I have this, you can kind of see it. It's a little darker at the end there. In watercolor, they call that line at the bottom the bead, and they tell you want to keep the bead alive. Because once it once it dries up, that's it. I actually think watercolor is like really forgiving. I forgot this over here.
So I've got both images spotlighted. If anybody else is, as you guys, I know some of you are working from your phone or your tablet, and if you need to focus more on Amber's drawing, let me know and I'll remove the spotlight that has the image. But I wanted to put those both up spotlighted for you. So send us a chat if you need me to focus on Amber's drawing and take the image off. We can flip back and forth.
Can people hear me fine? It kind of is jumpy right now on my end.
Yeah, if you guys are having trouble hearing Amber, let me know in chat as well. You sound fine on my end, Amber.
Okay. And I see that there's like these highlights on the ground. So I'm just gonna keep those white. And you don't, if you see something in an image and you like don't want to like, draw it, you can just remove it, right? You can like create the compositions that you want. And these ones are darker. Let's see here.
I guess what's nice with starting out with a light wash is that you can always go darker, right? And
yeah.
Like you said, you can remove it, but you can always just sort of work your way up and realize where your light source is.
Yeah, it's coming in this way, kind of like this person's backpack is like
Mhm.
completely, and these windows are all. Is everybody working away? Any questions out there?
We have a question about closed captioning, but I'm working on that on my end. So
Okay.
none with regards to the drawing right now.
Kind of connecting all these beads that were not quite connected before. You can kind of see that this person like shot this photo through a window or something. Like you were saying about like through the train window, or it doesn't
Yeah,
quite.
it was right on the bottom there.
Yeah. So I'm gonna give this a little bit of time to dry. The top is pretty dry by now, actually. Maybe I should have worked a little faster. But I wanted to show a couple compositions of Sumi Ink artists, that some like traditional compositions. So here's one of some mountains. As people are kind of catching up. Here's another one. This is more recent artist. I always was confused by these Sumi Ink drawings when I was a kid. I always thought that like, I didn't realize that it was fog at the bottom of a mountain. I always thought that the mountains were like floating, which is like kind of a strange thing for a kid to think. And oftentimes these drawings are very like grand, with like the people quite small in the drawings. This is a little house right there. You can use the ink to your advantage by having things closer up, a darker color, and as it moves into the background, you lighten up the color, the pigment. And then here's a very simple composition. It's two little fish and leaves. So they don't have, like, you know, your compositions don't have to be as detailed as this, right? And there are contemporary artists that use Sumi Ink drawings as well. Raymond Pettibon is an artist that I really like, his Sumi Ink drawings. So be careful, he has some risque images in here. Let me make sure.
Remind me of the name of who you're looking at, Amber.
Raymond Pettibon.
Okay, I'm typing into for some closed captioning. So
he is he was the artist that did like the cover of
like the
Sonic Youth
novel.
cover. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is like his political works. So there's a lot of stuff about presidents in here, and military. But he lives in LA, and he's very prolific. But he made his debut in like the punk scene, creating like show posters, and the Sonic Youth album is what a lot of people know him from. So if you touch your page and it's like a little cold, that means it's a little bit too wet to put on the next layer. I'm gonna put my my sound on mute and just blow dry this page just a little bit. There's no beads on it, so it's not like I'm going to be pushing a bead around the page. You don't want it that wet because otherwise it'll do weird things to drying it. And then we'll start on the medium wash. Okay.
Molly, while Amber is doing that, do we have an option to add closed captioning in real time, or do we need to do that on our Zoom channel? If you don't, because we do have a request for our closed captioning to be turned on. I am actually typing the step-by-step for them, but if we have an option to show closed captioning, that would be great.
I'm not sure right now, but we can look into that.
Yeah, we
definitely figure out a way to.
Yeah, we want to make sure everybody has the opportunity to hear. So we will get that corrected and I'll keep typing. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvette. So I'm going to start with this. It's like, I don't know if I should like paint looking down or paint looking at the screen. I forget where I'm at. So obviously this is going to be the darkest wash, the people, right? So we're looking for that mid-tone now with the second wash. Like this would be right in here. I mean, and then, you know, if you go too dark with the second wash, you might lose some of your people if it's not a dark enough sketch. So just be like aware of that. And I'm using my medium brush. I don't know if I said what brush I was using last time. And again, all of the stuff all the Sumi ink that you put on the page will dry lighter.
So we have a question. If you are having technical issues on your end, anybody, or you're having the screen freeze up, yes, this is being recorded and we will post it on our YouTube channel. So we'll put that in the chat as well, but all of the drink and draws are recorded and we do a little bit of editing on the back end and then we post it on the YouTube. So you can always watch the recording. And yeah, so we'll make sure that we'll get that link, that info in the, okay, Laurel got it. So great.
Is it me? Am I freezing? We're going to be a frozen.
I think it's on their end. That's what they were saying. So they just wanted to make sure if their internet connection is freezing it up, they can, you haven't froze on my end. So.
There's like a line right here. Make sure I get that. I'm still leaning my my page. I don't know if you can see this lean. It's about at a 45-degree angle. Oh, I almost got the wrong thing there. On this like little grid to the left of this boat, there's some people out there. It's a little darker.
Remind me why you're just leaning it so people can see, or are you leaning it so the ink moves down?
So the ink moves down. And then I just put some darker ink on the bottom there because it looks like it's a bit darker. It's moving up a little higher than I want it to, though. Might have to blot some of that out. Eee. Whoops. My phone is too heavy for the tripod. Okay.
Mine did that earlier today too. Had to reset it all up.
Like, you know, maybe I should put like a little, you know, like the weights that they have at the that you put on tripods when you're like photographing or something, like
Yeah.
put little weights on little mini weights for the
Little tent weights.
No, the tilting your page or tilting your board gives you a bit more water control. So you know that the water is going to be moving down. If you're, I mean, if you don't tilt the board, it will just kind of go, you know, you don't have the same like ability to know which direction the water is going to move in, right? And my underneath here is like a sketchbook that I have, and the pages are kind of bent, right? So like if I were to try to do a drawing on that, like all of the water would go to one area. So this allows you to know what like the wettest part of the drawing is at the bottom of your bead.
You said the wettest part is at the bottom of your bead?
Yeah. So this thing right here is what we call the bead. And you want to just kind of keep pulling that down the page. And there is like a white rope, and I feel like I should distinguish that rope. I think that like allows you to kind of see that it's tethered to the dock there. Oh no, there was a little white spot. Here, I'm going to put it up there. Bring that line down. How are we doing on time? Got 3 minutes. Good. I feel like I should have added a little bit more here. Let's go right through the legs here with this line that's that curve that's behind their legs, because those people will be darker than the curb. I'm going to do these windows. Some things, you know, I don't get with the initial wash, because if I had to go over them multiple times, it would get like a little muddy, or not like muddy in color, but like the line might start getting wider and wider and wider every time I go over it. So that's kind of why I skipped over doing all these little lines up in the You see it? Do we lose?
I'm going to take the photo off for a minute just so people can actually see your drawing a little bit more.
Deep. Okay, I see here. Move it up a little bit. So I didn't go over all those little lines before because I just felt like, you know, if I went over them 3 times, it's much easier to do that detail work at the end than, is this a little bit too bright? I feel like you might not be able to.
We can see it okay. Yeah.
Yeah. This darker ledge up here, I couldn't really see when I was doing my sketch because it was so similar to the other kind of shades over here. And then kind of go. I hope everybody's, you know, vibing out there with their drawings.
We did have one request, Amber.
What?
So I know your tripod's there, so that's why your drawing's at an angle. And
Yeah.
every so often, will you just put the drawing in the full frame so that folks can like, yeah, pull it down a little. Yeah, it's the bottom of your tripod leg. You can't see the.
Here, let me see if I can.
There you go. There you go. That's better. I know your hand now.
It's really interesting painting through the leg of a tripod.
Right.
It's like, okay, I'm gonna work on this guy with a real tall rucksack here. He has a hat, and his bill is kind of white. These people are just in motion. Seems to be a shadow on the ground in front of them of a person that we don't see. So I'm still on the medium wash here. And then his legs on the bottom. There's a guy right here.
The motion of your brush also kind of like emphasizes the motion of the people too, like the zigzag motion you're using.
And I could be using a bigger brush, like all those little wiggly lines. You might want to smooth those out. This is his elbow. And some type of case that he's carrying. And then it gets real blurry at the end. But it's not as dark. So maybe I'll just kind of use like the lighter wash to blur it out. And this guy, it's like, I can't, it looks like there's a post right there behind him. Kind of pull that color, that ink to the other spots. For that motion, the train speeding by.
Sorry about that.
This person has a briefcase, suitcase. There's some darkness over there in the corner. Okay, I'm gonna let this dry a little bit, and then I'm gonna go in with the darkest, or close to the darkest Sumi ink for the details. And I will be like adding a bit more form to some of these figures. And I'm gonna be adding those little dudes in and this person right here. So I'm gonna maybe wait till that bead goes down a little bit so I'm not pushing it across the page. And I'm also going to add that dark like box around the side. I didn't like leave the dark box on this side, I don't think. Maybe I did. Like the window of the train. I'll mute myself so you don't have to hear the hairdryer.
Amber, I'm sorry, I was answering a message. You're just drying the next wash. Is that where we're at right now? Okay, great. I looked away, so. Just a reminder, if you guys have any questions, you can feel free to use the chat function. We have some incredible participants tonight that are assisting me with helping me assist them better. We want this to be the most accessible program for everybody. That means hearing impaired, visually impaired, and we are going to be working to make this program as accessible as possible. So I hear you, I see you on the chat, and I want to take in all of these wonderful requests and make this the best program we can. Yep, we had a question and Amber's doing it. Can we see the photo image again? So thank you, Amber, for posting that there for folks. We're now on you just did the second wash, right?
Yeah, that was the second. I didn't realize I was muted.
Oh, it's okay. I didn't know you were talking.
Does that person want the image up for maybe a few
Can you
minutes?
see the image again? And I can do the split again. I just wanted
Okay.
to, you did it at perfect timing when, so I'll do the split spotlight.
Mhm.
So now we have the image and we can go back to Amber's drawing a little bit larger in a few minutes, but we'll leave the split up for right now. As you
Yeah.
start the next round.
Mhm. So I'm going to be going in with, actually, maybe I'll try to lighten this one a bit up here. This guy's head was like a little bit too dark. I just pulled out some. This is pretty dark. Those are a little dark too, but I think it'll be fine. I'm going to go in and start adding, because we have about 20 some minutes left. I want to have a couple minutes at the end for reflection. And any information that Yvette wants to pass on about sharing your drawings to the museum. But I'm going to start adding details to up here and more with the people on the bottom here. And this will be the final kind of the darkest color that I add to, or the darkest pigment that I add to the page. So you're welcome to follow along.
When you said up here, do you mean up at the top of the ship?
I mean at the top of the building. So all
Okay,
those
I
little
looked away
lines.
when you said up here. So up here
Yeah.
and then the figures.
And I'm going to use the smallest brush I have for that, actually. I'm going to turn it. I might have to do this upside down, so people can see it. So up at the top, I'm making these like quick little lines. The tiniest line that I can make with this little brush, kind of like what we were doing in that early exercise, right? There you go. So lines.
So you're using like the straight Sumi right now?
Yeah. Though, you know, I might add like a medium or something if it's like something I missed earlier. Or just to give it a little bit more water on my brush. You know, and spending a little bit of time on that early sketch can be, you know, can really like enhance how realistic the drawing is, you know, if you get those perspectives right early on, and you don't have to like, you know, take out your ruler later to correct things. And if you add any water to it, to your brush, like I added a little bit of water to this because I don't want it to be like that solid line, it will dry lighter. There's those two dark windows.
We have a question, Amber. Does masking fluid work with Sumi ink?
I'm not sure. I mean, obviously I've used it with watercolor. I would assume it would.
I'm
not
thinking
sure.
with any wet media, because once it dries, it probably, that's actually a really good question. I'm thinking it would still have the same removable process, although Sumi is a lot more permanent than watercolor, but I think with any wet processes, it should work. I have some right here. I'll test it while you keep painting.
Okay. It's also probably a Google search away, but this
Kind
is
of want to
cool.
do it myself.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I just happen to have it right on my desk.
And for people that don't know, masking fluid is this kind of almost like rubbery, sticky medium that you can put on your page to preserve the whites. I mean, it's like masking in Photoshop, right? Like you are physically blocking off a space on your page that the wet medium can't get into. And you add it to your page with a brush that you do not like. Don't use any $50 brushes to put masking fluid on your page, and then on your paper. And then once the masking fluid dries is when you can go back to your drawing your watercolor, or you can add more colors around that, and then your watercolor dries and you can remove the masking fluid. And it kind of rubs off. There's like masking tools that you can purchase, but you can just like rub it off with your hand. And gosh, what's another thing? You don't want to use a hair dryer on a piece of paper that has masking fluid on it, because it'll like really seep into the paper and you won't ever get it off. Let's see here.
The other thing is don't get masking fluid on your computer's mouse either.
Yeah.
That's always fun to keep away from.
What happens then?
It's just a mess. I just got it on my paper and then I was moving my mouse and I went, oh wait, that's wet. So I stopped.
Okay, I'm gonna do these people next. 'Cause we're getting close to time here. One thing that I've noticed with Sumi Ink that I haven't, like, if you use a light pencil line, it's just like when you do your sketch, for whatever, like, it is so easy to erase those lines, like easier than watercolor for whatever reason. However the Sumi ink sits, you can just go in with an eraser and erase all the lines really easily.
Could you use wax as a mask or a resistant?
I've never tried that.
You can use wax as a resist, and it will work because it's the idea of oil and water don't mix, right? The difference between using wax and using the masking fluid is the masking fluid you can erase off and remove it and then still have your actual paper tooth exposed. You could rub off the wax, but it's just the masking fluid is made specifically to remove, so you can then go in and still fill in afterward if you want, or reveal the white underneath or a color underneath. But wax as resist is kind of fun to play with washes especially. And there's another, can you use 2 layers of a medium value to create a darker medium value?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, they'll just kind of layer on top of one another, right?
Yeah, I think especially if you let it dry in between, you can really start to build up layers.
Did you try doing this drawing event?
I did. I actually have the sketch, but I haven't been doing the ink because I've been doing some typing. I've been sort of functioning as a closed captioning for this particular one. I love the figures in the background. I think that being able to capture their personalities with the gesture of how they're standing is like an amazing centerpiece. You wouldn't think they're the focal point, but they really do become the focal point of this composition.
Just standing around. Like, I like this guy that's has his arms crossed.
And the slanted leg, yeah. I'll have a story I have to tell you afterward, Amber, about a drawing I did while I was in Iraq of these different type of postures. It's a funny story that I think you'll get a laugh out of, but I won't tell it here tonight.
What?
That's a veteran story I have to share. And rarely do I do that, but I'm calling the veteran card tonight.
Do people actually drink on these calls?
I think some folks do, yeah. They and we we actually are now adding a little disclaimer though. Drink and draw, as you know, Amber, I would imagine is a long standing tradition in the arts community, right? Of drink and draw events are usually happen at galleries in different places. But for us, it's not implying that you have to consume an alcoholic beverage. Like drink could be coffee, water, a lot of different things. And we at our in-person events, we offer both alcohol and non-alcohol choices. But I think it's more of the gathering and not necessarily a cocktail hour. We like to tell folks if you are a veteran or your family member's a veteran that's dealing with alcohol or drug addiction, that they should definitely reach out to their local VA. And it's not required to drink alcohol at our drink and draw event. So tea, as folks put in the Stacy said, I refilled my whiskey, drawing gray blobs is thirsty word. And then Anne let us know she's drinking tea. Oh, and Anne said, I'm a veteran and like to hear your funny story. Well, Anne, I'll share it with you. We'll have to have especially the women veterans, I think would get a kick out of the story. But yeah, we definitely love our drink and draw. Oh, and then Laurel says, yes, when my Wi-Fi goes wonky, gin and tonic. We love our drink and draws. I always forget to bring enough water. Sherry says, we had chocolate pie. Oh, Sherry, that's so tempting. I might have to have apple pie tonight. I have these little tiny apple pie bites now. That's my new favorite. A little tiny apple pie bite with 1 scoop of ice cream. And Teresa is saying they are drinking soya milk. That's soya milk is good. It's like I like oat milk and horchata, but
Oh,
and said, are we sharing drinks while we are drawing? Yes, let's share our drinks.
I'm just doing water.
You got a water tonight? Well, yeah, you got to lead the charge here, right?
Yeah.
I've tried, you know, we think about sometimes we want to do a drunk history night at the museum, but we can't really pass that by. That won't pass muster. Yes, cheers to everybody. Wherever you find us, whatever you're drinking, however you're joining us, cheers, and thank you for being here with us tonight. That's actually, this is kind of summing up. I mean, we're watching these beautiful details come to life on the screen, and we are all talking about what we're drinking and what we are treating ourselves with tonight. And we're coming around the 8:24 time period. So I think, Amber, I'm going to hand it over to you for some final thoughts, and then I'll give my final thoughts, and we'll share some stuff with the folks before we head out tonight.
Gosh, I don't know. Final thought. I'm just like, I need to finish this drawing. Hopefully other people are really into it as well, and excited to finish their drawings. Yeah. And I hope that, like, you know, if you haven't used Sumi Ink before, that this was like, you know, a really great introduction to the materials and the practice. And I have a bit more I would like to do on my people here. I kind of started taking artistic liberties and making it a little bit more sloppy, a little bit more jagged. I'm gonna go around and add that dark black window soon here, and I'll probably let it dry and then finish it tomorrow. Like, you know,
I love the way the details started coming together, and I actually liked the quick line work on there. It really gave it a gestural feel to it, and I think it's beautiful. And we have folks in the chat right now saying I took lots of artistic liberties, and Sherry said so many artistic liberties. But that's exactly why we wanted. I'll answer that question for you, Laurel, in a second. We really wanted you guys to be able to get some basic brush, stroke techniques, and we give you the tools and you can take it in your home. Now you have the supplies. Thank you to everybody that bought a drink and draw kit. We finally had some drawing kits available through our shop. I hope they went well with you. And now you have the materials and some extra knowledge, and you can make more drawings on your own and add to it. This is recorded. You can visit our YouTube channel to see the recording, to get to review. You can also go back to our blog post and see the images there. And then we have a couple final questions here. One, what is the difference between India ink and Sumi ink?
I believe it's a different, like, the base of it's different.
Yeah, I think it's a concentration of the substrate of the actual ink, and then it has a different, I think Sumi ink is a little bit more opaque, but they're very similar. And there's a lot of different calligraphy inks. There's Chinese calligraphy ink, Sumi ink from Japan, and then you've got the India ink. So really, if you have Sumi ink, you can do a lot of the same things that you do with India ink. Wonderful thing about Sumi ink is, like Amber said, it comes in the solid form as well. So it's like a Sumi stick. And that's really fun. They have those at the art stores, you can get them. And then Sherry asked, do you have any of the kits left and how much are they? Our shop does have the drink and draw kits available, the Sumi ink. I believe we had a couple left. This was a special event, so I only made up a few. They were $12 and you got one watercolor, the heavy stock watercolor paper, 3 really light sheets of Japanese paper, and one brush and 1 small bottle of Sumi ink. So in reality, Sherry, you're welcome. Please feel free to purchase one from our website. If you go to the Wisconsin Veterans Museum website and the shop link, Molly will put that in the chat. But they also have these products at your local artists and crafts store, Hobby Lobby, Michael's, Artorama. Let's see, I've been out of practice using a brush. Thank you for walking us through these useful hints. And how do I use the Japanese paper? You use it the same way with a wash. Believe it or not, that really thin paper holds pigment really well. It's stronger than you think. So experiment with it, and you'd think it will crease and wrinkle. It won't. It really holds pigment quite well, and it takes washes really well as well. What side? Let me see. I have these here. I think it's your preference. They're both about the same. There is a rough and a soft. The soft, I think, I'm gonna look up that exact answer for you. I would probably go with the more smooth edge, but I do like texture. But that's just how the fibers look. Amber, which would you think on the Japanese paper, the smooth or a rough edge? You use watercolor paper, so.
I mean, it just depends on what you want. Like, I mean, you can use synthetic paper, which is basically plastic, right? Like the
Right.
EPO. So it just depends on how the rougher the paper, the more it's going to pull the water from your brush. So
Yeah.
if you want like something that's easier to slide your brush across, you're going to want paper that's less rough.
Yeah, and I'm actually just did it on both sides, and the smooth side kept a crisper line. The rough side gives you a little bit more of a blotted bleed out look. So if you like some of that like bleed out look, use the rougher side. If you want to keep some nice crisp lines, use the thinner side. The one thing about the really thin Japanese paper, it bleeds through. So make sure you have something underneath it when you're painting, because it will transfer onto your work surface. I'm just looking really quickly through the chat just to make sure.
Oh, there's a bunch of comments. I haven't even opened it.
Yeah, so is there ever going to be a virtual tour of the museum? We'd love to see it. So that actually is a perfect segue into upcoming events and upcoming drink and draw. So February, we're going to be right here in our comfy, cozy homes. I will be leading drink and draw in February as well. I'll be updating what we'll be focusing on. If anybody has any requests in the chat for something you want us to focus on in February, now's your chance. Put what you want to request in the chat. And in March, this is the big announcement. Ooh, watercolor pencils. Okay. In March, we have in Madison a big conference coming to town. It's called the Southern Graphics International Printmaking Conference. And for those of you that don't know my background, I am a printmaker. I do etching and lithography and woodcut relief and screen print. I have a screen print studio in my home. And so printmaking is my forte. And as part of the conference, our museum is hosting a temporary exhibit of prints made by veteran artists. And so we are doing a special drink and draw in March. When you look for your drink and draw event, keep in mind that in March, the date is going to be the third Friday instead of the second Friday. And that's because we're doing it in conjunction with the conference. And we are doing it live from our museum storefront window. So I will be on site at the museum, and I'm going to go ahead and spotlight myself, and then I'll put it back on. We'll be live from our storefront window at the museum. So I'll make sure and get a little video interaction of inside. I've got folks that need closed captioning, and I can't. Molly, do you mind going to the Teresa and direct messaging just a little overview of what I'm saying? Forgive me, we are going to fix the closed captioning. We do have it turned on our end. For some reason, it's not showing, but we will make sure that closed captioning is functioning and we get a little bit better image description for those out there. March will be a special 2-hour drink and draw on the third Friday of the month. And we are going to be doing a printmaking lesson, but I have access for tools to use if you don't have access to printmaking stuff. We are doing what's called monoprint trace drawings. And it's a lot of fun. You'll need a little printmaking ink and a little stylus. But if you don't have that, don't worry. I'm going to give full instructions on how you can do this it's a little bit of a different technique, but it's using crayons, and it's a little bit more of a scratch technique. But I want folks to know now so that you can keep an eye out for our event, which we'll be posting it next week, and also for our supply list. And we're going to be working with our local artists and craftsmen, so you can get a kit from them with the small printmaking supplies. But we'll be able to show you the museum at that point, and I'll give you a little tour to start the show out. So don't fret. Those of you across the country, across the world, will be able to see our museum, and we'd love to share it with you. I want to thank all of you guys for coming tonight. Thank you, first of all, to Amber Zora, excuse me, Amber, for joining us as our guest artist tonight. It was a wonderful class. Super excited you were able to join us. Hopefully we'll be able to bring Amber back for another class in a few months, and if she's willing, we'll twist her arm and see what class she wants to teach. It may be another Sumi Ink. If you want to know what's going on at our museum, please visit our website, and Molly's going to put it in the chat room, but you can go to our events. We've got a trivia night coming up. It's virtual on January 18th. And then if you are in Madison, we have what's called Mess Night, which is an evening with dinner and a lecture. And Shane Jaros will be here speaking about, oh my gosh, I'm pulling it up so I can remember. Shane Jaros is going to be talking about Iwo Jima. He's from the Iwo Jima Association of America. It's actually a lecture that was supposed to happen in April of 2020, but because of COVID, we had to put it off. We were supposed to have it for the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II. And so we're happy to have Shane finally be able to join us here in Madison. That's a registration event. And then January 28th, we have movie night, and we're going to be discussing Female Agents from 2008. So all of our events are listed in the link. Jennifer Carlson from our Wisconsin Veterans Museum Foundation thanks everybody for joining us. We hope you have a wonderful weekend. Just a reminder, we want to thank Generac Systems for sponsoring this event. And thank you, Molly, for co-hosting with me and keeping the chat room function live. And for those of you out there, and if you would type this to Teresa, Molly as well, we will make sure that our closed captioning function is working. Like we said, it's on, but we want this to be a wonderful event for all. And we'll also get those image descriptions up there for folks. I've got color pencil requests. If we have any more, just let me know. You guys, I know we usually show some of our images at the end of the night. You know, for the safety of all of our residents, we're going to go ahead and keep the cameras off from now on. So what you can do is you're always welcome to email us your images, and then the next drink and draw, I can show some of the ones from the time before. I think that's a really great way for us to share this continued fellowship that we have with each other. And I always like getting drawings as well. I like to show off your drawings. I think the work you do is incredible. Thank you, Hillary, for joining us. And Amber, any last words? I mean, you're welcome to talk and interrupt me, please.
So if it's okay with you, I'm gonna share my Instagram on here, and y'all can definitely message me your images. And my website is also connected to my Instagram page, which I can also put in there.
Great. I'm actually typing. Yeah, you guys you can always share via Facebook on our end for the museum, and Instagram as well. And then our marketing folks will share the images with us.
And thank you guys so much for coming.
Yes, thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you, Amber. And Amber, would you like us to share your artist website? Or
I put it in there.
You put it in there?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, great. So if you want to check out Amber's amazing photography, go to her website. It's pretty great. And a lot of the Sumi Ink drawings that you've done in the past are there as well. We exhibited those in Madison a couple years ago. It was 2018. Time is flying. We had some of those images on exhibit at Edgewood College, and it was nice to share wall space with you.
I also had them at that hotel downtown.
Oh, that's year. Right.
Some of them. But
oh, that's right, at the Marquette.
Yeah.
That was recently. I was actually out of town for that. But yes, the Marquette Hotel has some artwork up. A colleague of ours, Ash Kyrie, curates some stuff over there. And
well, thank you so much, Yvette, and the Wisconsin Veteran Museum. And thanks for having me. And hope you all have a good weekend. And I hope this is a really great start to your weekend. Have a good one, y'all.
Thank you, everybody.
Oh, someone said, where else can we see your work? My website's www.amberzora.com. It didn't do the link though. The link is further up. Oh, in person? I don't know if there's any.
I'll be with you once. We are virtual for the time being. We are still in flux at the museum of what in-person events we're conducting and when we'll go back. We do have plans on doing a quarterly in-person drink and draw, but we are going to keep drink and draw virtual every month indefinitely, even when we have the in-person event. We are looking at in-person events on gallery nights. So that would be usually in May and October. And then special occasions. Part of that March conference, we're doing live from the storefront window events with visiting artists, and we're going to be printmaking in our storefront window the 16th through 19th. So you guys can stop by the museum and see us then as well. Oh, I meant, where would one see your work in a gallery, Amber?
I don't have any exhibitions coming up. I think that's just because, you know, galleries had to like kind of slow down last year, and they're making up that this year. But yeah, or I guess it depends on where you're at. But I don't have any exhibitions coming up. if you're in California, there's a couple in Oakland that display my work at the vet center in Oakland. But thank you guys so much.
Yes, thank you, everybody. I'm gonna go ahead and turn our soundtrack back on, and then we'll fade off into the sunset. Thanks again, everybody, and we'll see you next month.